A Mercy of Minds from Essential Atrocities. The same games, of course, too young to know, to remember the world as it was before my fire, before I taught it shame. None of them recall the hell of it, the unthinking cruelty of their parents, the bleak cynicism of their teachers. Better that way. No contrivance of mine, no gift to them, though it's within my power to grant such things. A mercy of their own minds, as they retreat and return, as they trick themselves into believing that the evenings grow late, that the days darken and die. They don't and never will, not in this place, a splinter in time and space, a fragment preserved from the fire. A gift for them, so that they can play and wonder, so that I can watch and delight in their games. Cruel sometimes, like their parents, like the world that birthed them, they are punished for that, though they don't recall, are allowed to see a little of what was when they stray beyond the fences, when they see the world as it's become. Ash and darkness, hollow, seared black buildings, charred bones littering streets and alleys, the empty wastes beyond. A glimpse only, a moment in which to hear the whispers of those less fortunate, confessions of pain and cruelty, of pettiness and presumption. Oh, bemoaned and regretted now, when it's too late, after they drew me here, through the filth, through the sewage between states, where realities bubble and burst together, where muck gives birth to muck, a place of fungus and worms and infection, where I walk sometimes, when I can bear it. A glimpse is all I allow them, all they can withstand. Promises following the cries and howls, their breathless pleas as they run from the vermin that have gnawed and wormed their ways through, that have evolved from the dead, formed of their parents' ashes and regrets. Promises that they never keep, but I can't resist believing that they will be better when they return, that they will play beautifully again and be happy to forget the world. This one, just returning, so spiteful, so jealous of her friends' attention for one another, taught that much by creators who poisoned her with their affections, proclaiming her the centre of creation from the first smiling moment, the first wordless idiot gurgle, the original ember of thought. So deeply ingrained, she reverts to the myth of her memories again and again, no matter how powerfully or painfully recreated, no matter how far I remove her from the child that was. She stumbles through the gates of the playground, tattered, bloodied, ash-strewn, like so many of them, back rent by the beasts that crawl and hunt through the wastes, barely able to stand. I watch as the other children go to her, as she collapses in their arms, a beautiful doll, hollow head filled to bursting with new stories, new myths, so that she might be more when she wakes. But none that hold, none that burrow deeply or intimately enough, that spread with the rapacity of the original cancer, the evil that led her here beneath my eye. Tomorrow, or the day after, it doesn't matter. Soon enough, it will make itself known, rearing up through the sweeter lies I tell her like a worm from beneath honey. And she will be that same child again, selfish, cruel, narcissistic. They will turn on her, as they always do, and she will flee from the playground, from beneath my eye and protection, out of spite that they will not bow to and obey her whims, that they won't make her the centre of their adoration, a child idol in an infantile cult. One of the most lost, who will one day not be able to find her way back, who will forget and become like the other beasts and phantoms, a scavenging thing, half forgotten to itself, but not enough, not nearly enough to maintain sanity, its parents' true child. My burning obsession shifting away from her to another, the boy who is taller, stronger than the rest, who has known it since he first walked through the gates, a leader, one around which tribes form, legends accrue, a king or prophet born, knowing how to speak, how to manipulate, when to use sweetness, when to use violence, the latter all he has ever known, all his parents taught him, fear, pain, anger, the shards and stuff of his life. Something he has fought and fought, that he resists every day. The black bile, the poison behind his eyes, in his belly, threatening to bubble over, boil away composure, make him just another monster. Sometimes there's nothing he or I can do to stop it. Sometimes he is his father's child, a snarling, spitting beast whose only coherent words are sewage, foulness, who doesn't stop hitting until his fists are bloody, his victim still. Those ones, the weak and unknowing, the squint-eyed and snot-nosed and asthmatic, I repair, purge of all memory, not allowing them to recall and be poisoned by the violence done to them. Their abuser I cast out again and again, allowing him to see me as he has before, peering down at him through the clouds and smoke, through the swirling ash as he goes to his knees, as the others laugh at him, mock him for soiling himself, as he weeps, grovels, remembering. Out there now, exiled longer than previously, for a sin beyond simple violence, for losing himself, for attempting to create something like his parents' ashen kingdom here, in my playground. A sin I will never abide. I hear him, I see, through my eyes in the ash, from the storm above, no longer known to himself, a lost, hunched and roaming thing, twisted and transformed by the broken world where he wanders, by the fractured nightmare his parents have left to him, to them all. He's a beast now, perhaps happier in that state, greater than he was before, no longer a child, wiry, muscled, black pelt shimmering in the inconstant sun and moon, eyes blazing with hurt, insatiable appetite for pain, inflicting it on all he encounters, the lost and exiled ones, his twisted siblings. Displays of such violence, such hideous torment. Like a cat, he doesn't merely kill and devour them, but keeps them alive for as long as he can, hunting and stalking them, reaching out from shadows to rake them across the back or ankles, to rip open their cheeks, allowing them to flee into the labyrinth of inconstant ways, pursuing them as long as play sustains, the end never clean, never quick. Closer, closer with every day, maybe remembering, in some vague sense, what he was here, what he might be again. I'm not sure I can save him now, not sure that I want to. Others follow in time, as they grow bored of the endless games, as they remember a little of who they are, where they're supposed to be, peeling away to find long-lost parents, brothers and sisters, friends and not quite lovers. I let them go, always. Not their parent, never making the same mistakes. Fascinated, endlessly fascinated by their contradictions, their absurdity, what they do when they think no one is looking, when they believe themselves alone, the games they play, the elaborate stories they weave, which transforms the small island of broken concrete into strange and alien kingdoms, war-torn battlefields, desolations carved by dragons and demons, woodland realms and forgotten gardens of fae and fairy things. I see as they do, through their credulous eyes, the dreams they weave, the transformations they wreak on the world, still not understanding that there's so much more than ephemeral fantasy, that they are little mad gods in their own rights, spawning realms and realities with every stray thought and inspiration, that I can walk in them as easily as I do here, and will, when this experiment finally fails to obsess, when I grow weary of sustaining it. Maybe by that time they will have dreamed themselves other enough to see me, to speak and dream with me without losing their fragile, precious little minds. Perhaps others amongst them will even become kin, like others I have observed, or will observe, or never will, when they are weary, so weary of being children, of their endless games, and wish a new playground for themselves, beyond anything I can create or suspend. Or maybe not. Maybe they'll be like so many others, passing fancies that will expend interest long before they evolve to that condition, blinking out, crumbling as I forget and slink my way back into the filth between worlds. I don't know. Only that nothing in all of time and reality obsesses me as much as this, here and now. Nothing excites my passions or rouses me to such ecstasies as observing their games. The ache to join them almost irresistible, to reduce myself, find some burned and blasted carcass in the wastes, purge it of carrion poetry, of myths or memories that might still infest it, weave a suit for myself from it, a child mask that I might go amongst them in, join their games, in which I might even forget myself for a time, allow myself the delusion of innocence. Yes. So lost in those fantasies, the other states and playgrounds they spark, I barely notice until she beckons, the one separate from the rest, who takes no part in their games, but wanders, fascinated by the ephemeral worlds behind her eyes. She smiles up at me, beckoning for me to come down and join them. Impossible. Impossible. The sight of me surely enough to boil her eyes in their sockets, to blast whatever sanity she boasts to shards and atoms. Yet there she stands, her eyes whole and flaring amber in the perpetual dusk, clearly not mad or devolving into abomination. Her invitation more than mere words and gestures, a desire so unambiguous it lodges in me like hooks, draws on me like chains. It's so easy to deny, turning my sight from her, but something will not permit it. I ache to be with her, to be like her. Laughter in my mind, a mind that contains depthless, fathomless realities in which this playground would be lost, nothing but a scrap of dying creation preserved after apocalypse. My mind, where a million others like me reside, my undying children, where they fashion realms, dream their own conditions, occasionally bleeding or burrowing out, worms erupting from my skull. My mind, which is so far beyond what they might call the same, as an ocean is to a teardrop, a storm to a breath. She is so small, so simple, nothing. Yet I can no more deny her than Canute could the tides. Already dissolving, I accept her invitation, reach out into the surrounding wastes, casting my eye through the broken, shadowed, shifting streets for something, anything. There, elation mingled with mourning, one of mine, one of the self-exiled, bored of the games, aching for more, not realizing or remembering that there is nothing left for them in this world, save what I choose to suspend. A boy, his body rent, charred and blackened, picked clean in places by the scavengers of those wastes, infested with parasites, echoes that seek to be more, ghosts that partially recall what it is to be flesh, envying it, even in this rotted, stinking condition. I pluck him up, cradling him like the most delicate of butterflies. So little is left of flesh or soul. It's simple enough to purge him, even in my dissolving condition, for my dust and powdered bone, my fire and smoke to flow into him, cleansing him of worms and fungus, fleas and carrion. They scream as they emerge, pulsing formless and empty into the air, carrying nothing with them as they rain back into the darkness below. The girl watches, fascinated. Others beg to know what she sees, blind to it, mocking her for it. She shows them. Taking the hands of the nearest, she shares her sight. None burning, none clawing out their own eyes or collapsing into convulsions, none fleeing, watching as I come apart, as the stars erupt from my skull, as my heart becomes a sun in which every inch of me incinerates. So long since I knew this, since I mourned my own passing, luxuriating in every instant, as my mind and the realities it contains collapse on themselves, as apocalypses beyond count or measure occur in the same span of heartbeats. A moment, sublime panic, as I realize I may not be able to ascend again, this time, that I may live and die here, as one of the lost children. I surrender, not allowing that anxiety to undo all I've begun. The girl smiles, her friends likewise, so much wiser, so much more known to themselves than I ever saw. Ha! The same sin, the same blindness as their parents, their makers and masters, always and forever. The carcass in my hands shudders as I fill it, as it swells with my light and dust, a vessel for cosmic fire, for memories that no mind of meat can contain. I feel him stir around me, still skinless, but swelling with fresh flesh, a thing of agony, as new nerves flare, as they bask in fire and smoke. The pain of it intense, worse by far than any death I've suffered or shared, but nothing compared to the sense of being smothered, of being constricted and contained within a sack of swelling living meat. Passing, I flow, becoming little more than the stuff of thought, an element in his blood that no doctor or chemist might detect. No longer held, no longer a doll or puppet, me, the very essence of myself, no distinction existing between us now. Falling, falling as the last of me disperses, entering his first inhalation, as he plummets like a celestial child ejected from heaven, as he sleeps upon the charred, shattered stone, and I dream with him, as him, of the games we'll play, the states we'll inspire. Epilogue. Watching that strange, lonely boy, older than all of them, maybe the eldest, fascinated by him, alone now as ever, while the others play in the red sun, while they dance and whisper secrets, making promises of an adulthood that will never be. She doesn't know him, yet does, as though from a dream, when she was a babe, when she still remembered mother's arms and the taste of milk. Before she learned the distinction between awake and make-believe, before she stopped believing in me, the voice in her thoughts, the burning worm in her head. Nothing but a fantasy, a lonely child's imaginary friend, silent now, unheard, but far from forgotten. Alone in his ragged shorts and t-shirt, alone as the breeze comes, whipping up his overlong hair, alone and staring up at the empty golden sky, as though there's something there only he can see, as something was once. I feel her shudder, slithering through her, eager to erupt, the laughter of a far wiser girl and far crueler. Catching her breath, she remembers seeing the monster in the sky that held the playground with its eyes in its burning talons, that led them back to it again and again after they were lost or fled from it, after they forgot themselves. And those memories that are worse, far worse, nightmares of fever and confusion, of running, of eating filth that made her vomit, made her stomach writhe and her throat erupt with blisters, sick meat, old bones, poisonous muck and fungus. So many, lost there so many times, so many girls with her face, returning after a time, forgetting by the grace of the beast above, and by mine, the nameless angel of her infancy. Gone now, as the boy knows, yet still they come, more and more every day, every hour, stumbling through the torn and twisted iron gates, slumping to their knees against broken concrete, blinking in the sun, guided by their own beasts and angels, their own worms and demons, by selves they have dreamed and lost. None now. How can they? She tried to show them once, and they forgot, just as she has, just as she begged me to make her. Too soon, too young, too many games to play, worlds to wander and make for themselves. But now, time at last. This little girl's skin and little girl's skull too cramped, too suffocating for what blooms inside. Rising from where she sits, cross-legged on the scorched and shattered concrete, she goes to him. I unfurl, no longer merely a worm that whispers stories, that sings her nursery rhymes, but a dream that she's never dared realize before. Other eyes on us as we swell and crack and bleed, not just red, but luminous white and silver, the pain excruciating, ecstatic, all we're meant to be about to birth itself, but not yet, not without reminding him. He laughs, this strange, lost boy, laughs as we touch his shoulder, as our light and matter flows over him, as he takes our hand, my hand. Wings unfurl inside, beyond the bounds of her skull, her stretched and splitting skin, the girl weeping for her own loss, laughing through tears as she recalls herself, all we and I ever were, memory that stretches forward from this point as well as back to what we might be, what I might make, after she and I dissolve, becoming one. He is fire and bone, or was once, a father of apocalypse, a child of the same. Oh, the worlds he has burned, the dreams he's licked hollow, only to shat or vomit up, to choke on and abandon, to lap up and be poisoned by, over and over again, as I have, as we all have and will once more. Some run, the gates of the playground clattering, their screams fading. No returning after today, no remembering, going the way of their parents after all. But others watch and remember all they have been, have dreamed and wanted for themselves, the strange states in which they fly while sleeping, the beasts and disgraces they become outside in the ashes of their makers. They rise and swell with us, even those that do so reluctantly, that cling to this existence, this delusion of childhood, as though it was ever anything more. No two are alike, any more than we are, my brother and I, my lover, husband, child, and destroyer-to-be. He laughs as he comes apart, as he rises from himself, to where the boy he wore still looks, a shadow of bones and burning matter, staring in horror, in joy, as the thing that haunts every idle fantasy, every waking nightmare, swells before him, kindling the clouds, blazing the sky to fire. She screams as she comes apart, as I flow from her, others echoing her, a labour-pang choir, as they give birth to themselves. The children they are and never were, splitting at the seams, bursting apart, melting from their own bones in ecstatic conflagrations. The playground cracks and dissolves, no longer necessary, now that we have dreams of our own. Others already coalesce to supplant it, states elaborating under their own enthusiasm and inspiration, whose dreamers already walk there in a million skins and masks, authoring their own apocalypses in time and transcending once more it to this state of perfect potential. I am with him, braving his fire as he braves mine, for the first time in waking millennia, moonlight sister, sun-blazing brother, an incest that ripples and rages through time, myth, and the troubled sleep of children who wake at their own conditions, praying to be more than birth or life or death can allow. The girl and boy we were, realizing in this final rapture that they are the projections and contrivances, the dreams that parents might ridicule us for holding, not mourning that revelation, as others do, not railing against it, attempting to hold on to lives that can never be and never were, but surrendering, in their sorrow and weariness, allowing themselves to be consumed, lost to the flames. Maybe we forget again in time, when our passions cool, when we finally part, when he slinks back into that sludge between conditions, the sewer outside of being, to curse the moment either of us were born, that he was ever so foolish as to love me again, to believe anything between us could be different from the million schisms before. Or maybe not. Maybe this time we will be wiser. Thanks to the children we were and whose games we shared, returning to the original state, a single condition, that was once more than either of us before we tore ourselves apart and became alien, alone, and perpetually wounded. All is possible, dreamed and lived in an instant, in a projection of millennia that spans a mortal blink. None of it matters in this conflagration, this love-making that sets reality aflame, that undoes all we might have made and leaves us trembling and naked in our earnest unknowing, enraptured by our mutual ignorance of tomorrow.